Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
We met because the Route 30 for trolley decided to quit in the middle of Baltimore Avenue. It was January, slush on the tracks, everyone sighing into their scarves. The driver told us to transfer to whatever shows up, which is Philly for good luck. I offered a hand warmer to the woman next to me, scrubs under a too thin coat, hair jammed into a bun with a pen. Maria, she said, taking it like a dare. 10 Presbyterian. If my fingers fall off, I'm off service. Max, I said, city at 311 stuff. Boring until it matters. We walked 3 blocks to a bus that never came and then to a coffee shop that always did. We compared gear. She carried almonds and a phone charger. I carried a set-to-key cart and a notebook that made me look busier than I was. When the trolley started moving again, we didn't. I got her number by saying I'd text if the line ever behaved. It didn't, so I texted a lot. We learned each other in the usual Philly way. Loops on the Schuylkill River Trail. Reading Terminal on Saturday mornings for a soft pretzel and a strawberry milk Rhea swore tasted like childhood. Late ties at E-Park when our shifts pretended to sync up. I rented a narrow row house in West Philly with a transom. I'd let the cold in like it paid rent. She had a room in a rectangle of a house in Taunton with 3 other nurses and a cat that chose violence for AM. We were both the type to keep a bag packed for the next thing, hers with scrubs, mine with chargers. 9 months in, a 1-bedroom opened up in Fishtown with a slanted floor and a backyard barely big enough for a chair. We pooled IKEA Allen keys, bought a second-hand couch off a buy-nothing post, and argued about the thermostat like people who've read their Payco bills. Rhea hung her stethoscope by the door so I don't forget it in the morning. I labeled the breaker panel with masking tape so we'd stop killing the kitchen by accident. The first cracks weren't dramatic. They showed up in calendar holds and how we spoke when we were too tired to be kind. Her double back shift stretched into there's a thing after and my 5-minute fix turned into midnight slack because a map tile wouldn't load. I handled it by cleaning surfaces that weren't dirty. She handled it by staring at one point on the wall and saying she couldn't talk about it yet. We invented a bad habit, postponing the same conversation with after this week. In March she got an email from a program in Pittsburgh, 1-year fellowship on a street medicine team. It was the kind of offer that makes a life bigger, and I felt the floor tilt without moving. We made a list at a bar on Girard. Pros, cons, what we could afford, what we couldn't. I did math to prove long distance was possible. She traced circles on a napkin and said, I love you. I also want this. I don't know how to have both without us breaking. We try, which is different than pretending. For a month we did facetime dinners, where one of us always ate cold food. I learned Pittsburgh's bus routes I would never ride. She learned the angle in my apartment where the Wi-Fi was strongest. The lag swallowed our jokes. One night, close to 1, I typed, I miss being tired in the same room. I didn't send it. I fell asleep with the phone lighting my palm like an open fridge. We ended at 30th Street Station because life likes a backdrop. She had a backpack and one of those vacuum bags that make clothes look like fossils. We hugged in front of the board that flips to slowly, and I said, I don't want you to not go. She said, I don't want you to carry me there. We were both right, which was the worst part. Her train took the decision like it was always going to. After she left, the apartment was a museum of us. I moved the couch 2 inches, took her hoodie off the hook and folded it into the Goodwill bag, then took it back out. I booked therapy, a sliding scale clinic on Chestnut, and said sentences I usually translate into jokes that I confuse fixing with love. That it's fine is a lie only know I told a week later. The counselor asked what I do when I panic. I label things, I said. Then let's label some things, she said, which made me feel seen and mildly roasted. Life shrank in a useful way. I set a no slack after 8 rule and put the phone face down because I learned I wasn't that important after dark. I rewrote a handful of error messages in our 311 portal from invalid entry to we couldn't read that, try again, and the help desk tickets dipped like someone had opened a window. I started a Friday quiet half hour that was just tea and not fixing anything. It felt like nothing and worked like medicine. Rhea texted sometimes, a photo of a sunrise over a hospital lot, a picture of a paper sign that said leave shoes outside, in block letters, once a video of her team setting up a clinic under a bridge in the snow. The sound mostly wind. I sent back tame things, a photo of the L crossing a river, a bowl of soup, the door closer I installed so our door stopped announcing itself to the block. We didn't swap feelings, we swapped weather and proof of life, which was enough. Spring in Philly, wet and then instantly hot. The house smelled like damp drywall and Wawa coffee. I put felt pads under the chairs and added a hook by the door so my keys would stop migrating to the table like teenagers. I printed a one-page heat plan for the building where the fans were, who had the super's number, and taped it by the mailboxes with blue painter's tape because you don't staple a hallway into permanence. A neighbor I only knew by shoes wrote under it in neat capital letters, "Thank you /Spanish version." I added one the next day with help from 2F. People started using the numbers instead of the chat to yell. Small miracle. Work calmed down when I started ending updates with "Here's what happens next" instead of "We're working on it." I also added a slide to onboarding. What you don't need to know by Friday. It listed the last 5 years of release names and every executive's middle name. At the bottom, you can say "I don't know yet." The interns took photos like they'd found a cheat code. In June I saw Ria at Headhouse Farmers Market, both of us reaching for peaches. We did the polite version of our lives: sleep, work, heat. She said, "You look steadier." I said, "You too," and meant it. We hugged with the space you leave for a bag, then split to different stalls. I went home surprised at how uncomplicated my chest felt. Not empty, clear. By summer my building had a mutual aid shelf that started as a piece of plywood and to brackets and became a small economy. A jar of quarters with a rubber band and a note that said "Return when you can" appeared. A level, a roll of good tape. Someone added a card. Take, leave, label. Nobody stole the pump. The pump didn't need to be guarded. I learned the names of 3 neighbors without asking for them. I met someone, not dramatically. Her name is Jamie, and she runs lights for a small theater on South Street. We became soup on Sundays people without deciding to. We made a house rule early, asked before fixing the other person's system. She loops cable like it's sleeping. I put hex keys in ascending order because I'm unbearable. We traded corners and left the rest alone. There were still small tests. A courier started leaving packages on the stoop again. I made a sign with a picture of the lobby and the words "Please leave packages here" in a font you couldn't feel judged by. It worked on everyone but one guy who treated arrows like suggestions. Mr. Lopez from 1 billion beat us all by waiting, pointing, and not saying anything. The box went to the lobby. Sometimes UX is a finger. Ria texted once more in the fall. Moving again. Different clinic. Proud of us, was all it said. I typed "you too" and put the phone down before a second sentence tried to sneak in. The skill of leaving the right amount of space is learnable, it turns out. When smoke rolled in from somewhere upstate, I built a quercetin box in the hallway with MERV filters and a fan. A neighbor kid drew eyes on it and named it Gus. Gus hummed like an old fridge and people stood under it with their palms out, checking the air like soup. I wrote the date on the duct tape with a Sharpie so we'd know when to change it. The building learned a new sound. Calm. Winter came like a dare. The heat banged, then remembered to be heat. I printed a bilingual to cold sheet with the 311 number and a script that started with "Thank you for fixing this" by people taped their ticket numbers to the board instead of typing novels in the group text. A week later, an inspector came with a tablet and a calm face. He saw the sheet and said, "I wish more buildings did this," which I took personally. One night I woke at 3 with the old static. I made tea, stood in the kitchen, and told myself 3 things to do in the morning. Turn the plant a quarter, check the door closer, cold air makes it lazy, write a 6-line update instead of a saga. I went back to bed and didn't try to solve love with a notification. When the year rounded out, Jamie and I added a tiny calendar to the fridge. Change filters in January. July salt by the stoop in November. No slack after 8 unless the city is on fire. Soup Sundays unless one of us says "not today." We're not dramatic about it. We're grateful. I still think about Ria now and then, usually when I pass the spot on Baltimore where the trolley likes to reconsider its purpose. I don't treat her like a lesson. She's a person. I loved who picked the road she needed. I picked mine. The overlap was real, and so is the distance. On a Tuesday that smelled like snow and laundry, I did my loop. Check Gus filter arrow, restock the paper clips, straighten in the sign, tighten the door closer a quarter turn, and watch a neighbor carry a package to the lobby without being asked. At home, I set to bowls out and texted Jamie. Soup's on. The lamp threw warm light. The door eased shut the way I set it to. No speech, just a soft catch. I stood in the doorway and tried on a sentence that used to feel too small and now fits exactly. I'm here. Tomorrow I'll fix a small thing, write a kinder line in a form, and refill the quarter jar downstairs. Nothing cinematic. Plenty to live on. By spring I could tell the apartment by sound alone. The fridge had a respectful exhale, the radiator clicked like a metronome that finally learned timing, and the door closer ended the day with a soft ch instead of a verdict. I stopped arranging the room like a museum to a life that left and started treating it like a shop. I actually worked in tools where hands could reach them, notes where tired eyes could read them. Work settled into the same tone. I finished a plain language pass on our worst terror states. We lost the connection. Try again in a minute. Deet 500 for by a Milan added a slide to onboarding called What You Don't Have to Know by Friday. People laughed, then exhaled, then asked better questions. We kept the thank you minute at the end of sprint review. No balloon arch, just one specific compliment each. It turned meetings into rooms you didn't brace for. I became the unofficial superintendent of little things. In the lobby I labeled a bin mutual aid table and stocked it with felt pads, painter's tape, a loaner screwdriver, and index cards pre-printed with take, return/date. At first the bin looked like a joke. Then a level vanished and came back with a different handwriting on the date line. Trust isn't a speech. It's a pen attached to a string that doesn't get stolen. Maya texted once in April. A photo of a courthouse hallway, the caption for hours for 5 minutes. I sent back the view from my bus stop under a sky pretending to be blue and wrote, same. We were the right size again to people reporting weather, not trying to change it. On a Saturday I taught a 15-minute how not to strip a screw at the library's fix-it day. 10 people showed up with wobbly chair legs and the stubborn belief that more force is always the answer. We practiced the opposite slow pressure, to right bit, stop when it squeaks. A teenager fixed his mom's lamp and whispered oh like a magic trick had just been explained without ruining anything. That afternoon I met Rowan at the tool table, a neighbor from 2 floors down with a cable coiling habit and a dry smile. We figured out we both prefer instructions over pep talks and soup over plans. We traded small rules early, asked before fixing each other's systems, logistics by text, feelings in person. Friday nights are protected silence, no exceptions. I gave them a copy of my spare key on a giant binder clip. Not a ring, I said. A reminder to leave room. They got it immediately. The building kept teaching me that safety is mostly boring. Someone left 2 e-bike batteries in the hallway. Old me would written a paragraph. Current me printed the FDNY 1-pager, highlighted the UL mark, and knocked. Not the hall, I said. Carries a decent metal box and a charger that won't turn your place into a toaster. He rolled his eyes, then moved the batteries inside the next day. A week later he sent a link to the right charger on sale. We high-fived the certification stamp. In June an inspector came through after a winter of heat complaints, the kind of guy who sees 7 buildings a day and remembers them all by smell. He measured, nodded at our laminated who to call when it's cold, and said, if I saw this everywhere, I'd get fewer angry voicemails. I replaced the praise with tape on the basement step you can't see in bad light, high contrast, right where feet land. By evening, the trip hazard was just a step again. I ran into Maya one more time outside the grocery store, both of us pretending to compare prices like it mattered. New haircut, same steadiness. We traded headlines. She said I looked less sharp around the edges. I told her she looked like someone who sleeps when she can now, not when she proves a point. No promises, no post-scene ache. The light changed and we let it take us. Summer did its trick. Smoke from somewhere far. A storm that turned the basement into a shallow lake, a brownout that dimmed the whole block to sepia. Our hallway muscle memory kicked in. We rolled out the charging strip, taped phones 15-minute to the wall, set a thermos labeled hot, plain, no questions. People cycled through, softer than usual. When the lights returned they did it politely. No cheers, just a shared, relieved breath and the quiet work of putting the table back where it lives. Rowan and I started keeping a shared calendar that looked like a hardware store. Won an argument with its therapist. Filters in January. July. Salt in November. Quiet hour on Fridays. Fix-it night first Thursdays. Soup on Sundays. Unless one of us typed no spoons. It wasn't romance. Exactly. It was maintenance we both wanted to do. There were still flare-ups. A reorg at work threatened to hand me 3 projects and a panic. Old me would staple the moment shot with a late-night doc and a heroic promise. Instead I wrote 6 lines. What broke, what we know, what I can deliver by morning. What happens if we punt, who owns the edge cases. Ting me if this blocks you. The thread quieted in under a minute, the way a door quiets after you finally install the closer. Mint the building cat that belongs to no one and everyone stopped eating during the worst heat. The vet said, water, shade, patience. I built her a cold cave with a towel and a fan, sat on the floor, and let her ignore me. She put one paw on my knee when she was ready. Not a breakthrough. A truce. By fall our corkboard had more verbs than flyers. Saltier November. Filter arrow fan. Text before drilling. Elevator. If stuck, stuck plus floor plus time. Someone added house thank yous in tiny boxes you could fill without being seen. Door didn't slam. Lamp doesn't interrogate me anymore. Neighbor carried stroller. It looked like childishness until you read it on a bad day and felt your shoulders drop. The last time Majo's name appeared, it was on a grant announcement someone forwarded with 6 other links. I smiled the way you smile at a street you used to live on, then turned the phone face down and stirred the soup. Rowan came in from the rain, hung their tote on the hook it finally mounted at their height, and said, "You adjusted the closer again." I had. The last tinch was perfect, now no drama. Just done. Before bed, I did my circuit. Lamp to warm, window latch, mutual table stocked, binder clips in the bin because someone always needs a paper clip that forgives. On the inside of the cabinet, where only I'd see it, I stuck one more card. Continue, it's an action. Then I turned off the big light, left a little hallway lamp on for whoever was still out, pressed the plate, and listened for the sound I'd been chasing since everything got loud. The door took one small breath and closed exactly how I said it to. "I'm here," I said, into the easy quiet. "That's enough. Tomorrow, change a filter, write a kind sentence, tighten a hinge, and leave room for what doesn't need fixing yet." By October, the mutual aid table had a binder. Not a manifesto, just a cheap 3-ring with sheet protectors and a title I printed at home in 18-point. House quick start. Inside. Winter phone trees, DHPD number, in big type, filter arrow fan. Salt in November. Don't charge lithium batteries in the hall if the elevator stalls. Text stuck plus floor plus time. I added a pocket for index cards because people like to add things without asking for permission first. By the end of the week someone had slipped in trash goes out before 8 a.m. or raccoons conduct jazz, which felt right. Work kept the same tempo. We finished house style when people are tired. A 2-page doc that says start with the verb, don't scold, give the next step. Support sent the quietest compliment, fewer tickets that begin with "I'm losing my mind." I taped that line under my monitor with a binder clip because tape leaves ghosts on plastic. Rowan and I learned each other by fixtures. I lowered a coat hook to their height and stopped narrating it like a metaphor. They fixed the squeaky hinge on my bathroom cabinet with a dot of silicone and a look that said stop wrestling it. Friday night stayed protected, no screens, no plans we had to be excited about. Soup if we felt like it, toast if we didn't. They kept their key on the absurdly large clipped and touched it like a superstition on their way out. One night the elevator actually stalled. The new kid from TD texted the chat exactly what we'd practiced. Stuck 30 for 7:18 p.m. The building did what a building can do. Lydia from 5A called the number on the plate. Mark went to the machine room to meet the tech. I typed data back into the chat and left the line, "We see you." Well, wait. When the doors opened, the teenager stepped out pink-cheeked and unspectacular. No speech, no blame, just a nod like getting unstuck is ordinary business. I ran into Maya again in November. A metro transfer, or everyone becomes a river. New coat, same spine. We did the commuter hello, traded to lines of weather and work. She said, not unkindly, "You look like you finished things now." I said, "Mostly little ones." The train said doors closing and we let them. It didn't pull anything loose in me. Memory felt like a file I could open and close without breaking the hinge. Smoke came early and left late. We built another Kerserosenthal box for the stairwell and dated the duct tape so we'd know when we were lying to ourselves. Mr. Kim from across the alley put his palm in front of the fan like a blessing and said, "Good wind." Min Tower Building's orange diplomat approved the installation by sitting exactly in the airstream and looking faintly disappointed in us anyway. At the library's fix-it night, I tried a new 15-minute paper clip before stapler. I'd brought a drawer, 3 kinds of screws, wood glue, and a literal stapler. What's the smallest thing that would hold? And is temporary actually the right choice? People laughed, then nodded, then repaired a stool without buying anything. A woman hugged her lamp like a pet and said, "I was embarrassed to bring this. I told her embarrassment is just heat without a ground wire. December pretended to be gentle and then froze the stoop solid. Our salt bucket earned its keep. Someone added a note to the binder walk like it's icy and a strip of high contrast tape appeared on the top step. I always forget is there. In the group chat, the tone held. Front door slamming again became closer. Drifted anyone home at 7 to hold while we tweak. 3 people were. The last inch of travel went back to whisper. Rowan's venue lost power one night mid-set, and they called me for a stairwell that smelled like damp coats. 15 minutes, they asked. Thermos is on the lobby table, I said. No questions. They came by after midnight. Cheeks chapped, keys loud on the clip, and we ate toast in coats at the counter because heating the whole apartment felt like overkill. This is the good part, they said, not meaning toast. I believed them. At work we did the reorg dance again, and I got handed a tangle. Old me would drawn a Gantt chart big enough to shame God. Current me wrote a one-pager called What Still Works and listed the non-broken pieces. People calm down the way a crowd calms when someone says an exit out loud. My manager forwarded a customer note. Your errors feel like they respect my time. I printed it small and tucked it in the binder. My binder, not the houses behind, fix the small thing you can reach. The building started doing tiny rituals that made me proud, like a ridiculous parent. Lydia wrote remove by dates on flyers with a teacher's hand. The teenager from Today sharpened the lobby scissors and left a post-it. Snips better. Someone put a jar of earplugs on the table labeled for vacuums at night and also life. None of it trended anywhere. All of it worked. January hit with a break in the main under the street, a brown river that took the basement personally. We knew the drill now. Door sweep, wedges, fans later, pictures for the super, not because anyone gave us a medal, but because we'd written it down. Rowan texted no spoons and I sent back a thumbs up and a photo of a grocery rotisserie chicken like a treaty. We ate standing out and didn't talk about resilience. We talked about nothing and it was exactly enough. I started a small class at work I called 6 sentences. It's how you answer when a thread gets loud. What's broken? What we know. What well try by end of day. What happens if that fails? What you can do while you wait. Who to ping if blocked. The first time I taught it, a junior asked, what if leadership wants a big doc, stapler? I said, use it when delay hurts people who didn't choose it. Payroll, access, stuck elevators, paperclip for the rest. He grinned like it handed him an invisibility cloak. In February, the inspector came back, different person, same tablet, winter jacket zipped to the chin. He stood in the lobby reading our binder. The way you read a menu because someone cared about verbs. You folks run a tight ship, he said. We run a small one, I said. He laughed. Those are the only ones that actually turn. I stole that for later. There was a brief flare with bikes in the hall, because there's always a flare with bikes in the hall. We taped a map of studs inside apartments so people could mount hooks without guessing, started a monthly loner drill hour, and called the problem solved when the hallway actually cleared. Not consensus, compliance, with dignity. Good enough. Maya sent a photo in March sun on a courthouse step. Her shoes pointed somewhere that wasn't this block. The caption said, 1-1. Not glamorous, worth it. I typed proud of you and hit send without the old itch to add a memory for ballast. I don't hold the rope anymore. I know where it's tied. Spring arrived as a series of repairs. I replaced the gasket on the leaky bathroom faucet and slept better that night than I have after any vacation. Rowan and I bought a casserole dish at thrift store and wrote our address on the bottom in Sharpie because loners only come home when you give them a map. We slid a page into the house binder titled Borrowing is a System and no one made fun of it. 2 weeks later the dish returned with a paper-clipped recipe card. Add fennel to sausage. Small edits from strangers. Received. On a warm Tuesday the crossing guard outside the school pointed to our sign, we see you. Cross quietly. Kids started reading it out loud, he said. And then they do what the sentence tells their legs. I told him that's my whole job, here and elsewhere. He said, good job. Like a man who has the actual hard job and is generous anyway. Rowan moved a second toothbrush in without a ceremony. We added filters July and salt November to our shared calendar and left the future otherwise blank. When I felt the old compulsion to write a plan big enough to trip over, I wrote 3 lines instead. Call early, not louder. Paperclip before stapler. Enough is what runs again tomorrow. That night, after the building quieted and the radiator found its rhythm, I did my lat. Mutual table stocked, binder updated, lamp at warm, latch set, the good scissors, where they belonged. I turned the phone face down and let the room be, so improve. The door closer took its small breath and did what we taught it. Here, I said, into the ordinary. And the ordinary said it back the way a good system does without drama, with receipts. Tomorrow, a filter, a hinge, 6 sentences, soup, short steps count.